I'm Marilyn Geist with Detroit Public Television's Great Lakes Bureau, greatlakesnow.org. I am at Put-in-Bay at Stone Lab. First time I've ever been here. And we're with Chris Winslow. And say your name and title, would you?
Yeah, so Chris Winslow, director for both Ohio Sea Grant and Ohio State University Stone Laboratory.
This is a Science and Environmental Writers Workshop, and I've been having a most amazing time and learning many things today, including today I met my first Lake Erie water snake, which I did not know existed. But tell me, the spot we're on right now, describe where we are right now.
Yeah, so we're on Gibraltar Island, which is a small island just north of South Bass Island, and that's where the town of Put-in-Bay is located. But we're specifically standing on what we call Lookout Point. This is where Commodore Perry's scout would have been to check for the British fleet. And so just south of this island, just south of the lab, just south of the Stone Lab here, we had Perry's fleet was in the bay, right in the bay of Put-in-Bay. And so when the scout had identified the British fleet coming from west to east across Lake Erie, there was a signal cannon at this spot, and that cannon would have fired, and then Perry's fleet would have come out from the bay and went out to engage the British fleet.
That's great. There's also a lot of history here. In fact, I was thinking about how, was this really one of the first laboratories studying the health of Lake Erie, and how long ago was it established as a lab?
Yeah, so Stone Laboratory has been around since 1895.
Wow.
It wasn't always on Gibraltar Island. It was actually in Sandusky first, and so the lab has moved a couple places. But in 1925, this island, Gibraltar Island, was purchased from the Cook family by a gentleman named Julius Stone. And Julius Stone was a member of the Ohio State University Board of Trustees. And as soon as he purchased the building in the island in 1925, he transferred that asset to Ohio State University.
Awesome.
And then we started building all the laboratory buildings and the housing in 1928-29, in that time period. So Stone Lab's home has been here since 1925.
And could you say that, I mean, Lake Erie is, of course, comes to mind when anybody talks about pollution, about, the health of the Great Lakes. Could you say that this spot could be the place that has really discovered some of the biggest problems perhaps about the Great Lakes and been tracking it? This is ground zero for the health of Lake Erie.
Absolutely. So 1895, that date, even though it wasn't here, Stone Lab was 1895. That is the oldest freshwater research station in the country.
Wow.
And so absolutely, I mean, when you talk about the health of the Great Lakes, oftentimes Lake Erie is mentioned as one of the ones that has some of the most critical issues revolving around it. Part of that's because of the number of people that live in its watershed, the kind of land use that's used in the watershed. But yeah, in the dead lake image of the late 60s, early 70s, it was pollution here in Lake Erie that helped motivate, Earth Day, the Clean Water Act, the establishment of the EPA, and all the work that came out of this island and neighbor universities helped to build the rebirth of Lake Erie. And so in the late 70s, early 90s, that time period, the lake was really healthy.
So what is happening here now on this island?
Yeah, so still research. I mean, we still have issues. We have invasive species coming in all the time. We have dredging issues. We have harmful algal blooms, nutrient loading issues, even coastal community development. So going into communities that maybe had industry before and now are trying to reinvent themselves, or looking at the impacts of climate change on storms. There is another superstorm Sandy that's going to be in our future, and we need to be prepared to address that. But along with the research, Stone Lab is a place for education. So we offer field trips in the spring and the fall, outreach. So as you mentioned, you're here for a Science Writers Conference. So we work hard to make sure the research that's conducted doesn't just get published in a journal and presented at a regional science conference, but that information gets infused into our courses, our field trips, and also gets to the media and the decision makers that need that information to make informed decisions.
How's Lake Erie doing now? Because there were harmful algal blooms, and we saw some amazing video of green boat wake.
Yeah.
In 2015, we had another incident in July. Tell me how Lake Erie's doing now.
Yeah, so I would say, there are a lot of issues in the lake. I mean, we do still have invasive species that we're battling with, round gobies, zebra mussel, things like that. But right now, I think one of the higher things on the radar is this harmful algal bloom. The forecast for this year is a 7.5 on a scale of 10. It's not in high numbers right now. If you look at the satellite forecast, it's a relatively small bloom. But this is the time where it starts getting some legs. So it starts showing up in late July through August, September, and October. So we're definitely, despite the fact we're not seeing high concentrations right here around the island, there's still a potential for us to get a bloom.
And whatever happens with Lake Erie, Stone Lab will be watching.
Yeah, that's the goal. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.